This short videos provide an overview of the PechaKucha process paper, a written assignment that's actually at the heart of our entire PechaKucha project, though of course a lot of our effort's been spent on imagining the performance and the visual components. Ultimately what we're aiming to do is be able to describe effectively in an essay how we decided to craft a composition, in this case PechaKucha, for an audience that would work very effectively given the generic conventions. This paper is described here on the assignment sheet section of our Canvas website, and I'm going to go over some of the basic details just so we're clear about exactly what's required. This assignment is going to be 3 double-spaced pages at the least, and the aim here is to draw on the notes that you've taken in your process journal, as well as any presentation drafts, or let's say your storyboard, to describe for a reader the steps you took to create your presentation. The essay is worth 10% of your course grade, while the actual performance of the PechaKucha is actually only worth half that, and worth 5%. As this is an unusual assignment, I wanted to spend a little time in this short video just to explain what it is and what you're doing, because it's probably unlike any written assignment you've had before. What you should talk about in your process paper is, well, it's a writing to learn assignment, much like the writing of the disciplines essay. The end result is to show you're thinking about your presentation. The paper needs to have a clear thesis, and I can't stress that enough. This is what's going to separate one paper that might be a list of different things you thought about from a coherent essay that actually is a clear point to make. So you should have a clear thesis describing one, or at most a few key factors that shaped how your PechaKucha was created. And then you should also demonstrate the process of how this final version came about by citing ideas, citing written portions, discussing images you included as well as ideas, writing in images that you ultimately decided not to use. The important thing is for this essay to explain why you made these choices. Remember, you're thinking about your rhetorical situation and what's the most effective way to communicate to an audience given the genre you're working with. So, what are some of the things you might talk about in your paper? Well, most simply, and something that often comes sort of readily to mind, is your topic. Did the topic of your presentation change as you made your presentation? Why or why not? Did that topic lend itself to the genre of PechaKucha? If you chose a different topic because it just really wouldn't work for PechaKucha, explain that and explain why it really wasn't appropriate for this particular genre. Similarly, you could talk about just an idea that you might have talked about. Describe an idea that you thought you would include in your presentation, but you ultimately cut. Explain why. You could talk about an image. And here I'd like you to be as detailed as you possibly can. Explain why a particular image in your presentation worked well in helping make your point, or explain why you chose not to use a particular image. Alternately, you could talk about your organization. How did you have to reorganize your ideas so that you could touch on one idea in the space of 20 seconds per slide? Any choices that you've made regarding your PechaKucha that helped your presentation fit the genre, or that made your presentation more appealing to your audience, or class, are worth discussing. The information here describes a grading rubric, what will be sort of counted towards, what will be important for your presentation, and there's also some information about when the rough draft is due and when the final draft is due. What I'd like to do now is just turn to a couple of past examples to let you know where you could find them, and also just give you some thoughts about how they open their papers and what their papers look like, so you can imagine writing your own for when we need to present a rough draft. This is our course resources page, and there's a lot of information now since we've had to switch to remote learning. What I want to do is scroll down towards the end of the section devoted to the PechaKucha and call attention to 2 links right here, Example Process Paper 1 and Example Process Paper 2. What we'll be looking at now is these 2 papers, and this overview will just begin to touch on them. If, when you're working on your rough draft, you need some guidance, I would recommend going to our course resources page and looking at these papers more specifically. For the purposes of this video, I want us to focus just on the opening of the papers, because the importance of the thesis statement for writing a clear PechaKucha process paper. So if you take a look at the beginning here, I've highlighted the section where the student actually begins to capture the one or at most few things that will be the subject of the rest of the paper. So the paper begins, when I first saw the PechaKucha assignment, I was a bit overwhelmed. Not because the assignment was exceptionally hard or the topic I chose was difficult to present, but because I was being timed. In the past, I had made presentations where I was timed, but this one was different. The exactness of timing, down to 20 seconds per slide, forced me to have every last word I wrote carefully thought out and practiced. The images I selected also presented a challenge for me alongside writing a script. Overall, making my first PechaKucha helped me learn how to organize my priorities when writing, and convey my most important points without having too much fluff. Now, as the paper continues, this student goes over and, sticking to these particular topics, talks about them and provides evidence that sort of is concrete. So we would say, here are the details about how they actually did pursue that process, what exactly they had to do to make sure they could meet that exact timing, how they could create that script that they followed so closely. In doing so, the whole paper has clear organization because we know that there's 1, 2, or at most 3 things that the paper is trying to do, and every time something's being discussed, it's not described generally. We're going to describe what it was that you thought about, did, changed, edited, revised, why you did so, and how you did so. In this sample student paper, we have another opening that slowly introduces the audience, or reader, into the idea of the PechaKucha presentation, but then leads us to 3 key points that this paper is going to address. Starting here, we have our authors say, in general, this project taught me the importance of choosing a topic carefully for information, content, and interest. One topic, so choosing a topic. Conducting careful and precise research, second thing. And it caused me to adapt to certain circumstances and realize that things may not always go as I plan. So 3 general areas that the rest of the paper is going to address. If we take just for starters and a look at the next paragraph, we see how the student introduces the first topic, but then explains where the challenges first came in. This person thought that working on the PechaKucha would be easy because, well, this student was free to choose whatever topic they wanted. But of course, we realize that can be its own burden too. And as this student had gone on, she began to realize that choosing a topic was going to be quite hard. There's simply too many things to look at. So, after spending an entire evening thinking of propositions, jotting down notes, this person finally decided on what their topic would be, trying to decide on one that would be effective for the genre and for the audience. For the student, that was the scientific benefits of laughter. The person figured that the subject was perfect, that students are generally stressed, and people enjoy laughter, so this would be something that would be quite useful given the audience that she was working with. When you're thinking about your own process paper, try to imagine both how you can introduce the topic, but make sure there's a key focus on choosing the 1, 2, or 3 things that you've written about the most in your process journal, that you've had to struggle with the most in your storyboard. This should be the subject of your process paper, and demonstrating those challenges and what you did so that you could write in this genre for your audience is going to be the real aim of the paper. If you can do that, you'll be doing a successful job in your process paper.